Hi, welcome to Your Stars Within. I'm Little Wave, and today I just want to talk about what is astrology. I've been getting a ton of questions from people asking me to just discuss a little bit about how astrology itself works or what exactly how I view it, what exactly is a birth chart. So I want to take a few minutes and just talk to you a little bit about what astrology is and what I'm looking at when I'm looking at your birth chart. So, astrology is a picture of where your astrology is a picture of where specifically all of the planets were amongst the constellations at the time that you were born. So, your sun sign, which is what you know, right? I'm a Leo or I'm a Pisces, but that sun is actually at a very specific degree in that constellation. So are you at 26 degrees Pisces or are you at 29 degrees Pisces, right? So each planet is somewhere amongst the constellations when you were born. Now, what does this have to do with you? Okay, so all of life is a pattern. Nothing exists in this life that is not a part of the greater pattern, the whole. We can see this in patterns like the seasons. We can see these patterns in sacred geometry. We can see these patterns in DNA, in coding, right? With a computer, when you're coding, that all things are somehow part of these greater patterns of life. And you are part of a pattern. You're part of a greater pattern. There's nothing that can exist that's outside of this pattern. And so when you know that, I hope that it brings you peace, that you can say, I am part of this greater pattern, and that I know that there's nothing I can do that pulls me out of that. I think that's a very peaceful thought for me. So here you're born, you take your first breath, you experience as an infant in your first moments of life a full impression of that moment, right? Exactly where the planets are and the luminaries are at the time of your birth. Now, this is a blueprint. I'm going to say that you chose this blueprint, right? You don't have to believe that, but I tend to believe that you chose this blueprint to come into this life for particular reasons, to help those around you, to learn and grow in certain areas, to relinquish some karma. And you came into this life with this blueprint in hand. This blueprint's going to tell us things like your personality. That's where we talk about, this planet is in this sign. That tells us a bit about your personality. It's going to tell us about your life path and your journey. We have many ways of looking at that. Some of those is looking at the progressions, how your chart is going to progress over your life. Some of that is looking at some of the connections that the planets make to one another and what houses, and getting a sense of how that's going to work out in your life. There's certain points like Saturn return that we all experience somewhere around the age of 28, and that's our first real coming into adulthood and our karmic payments. So if you have signs that are attached, or planets that are attached to karma, planets that are attached to Saturn, we're going to take a look at some of how that might come into fruition throughout your life. Your north and south node can tell us a lot about your current life path and what you're here to be learning about versus what you've already accomplished and mastered in past lives. And we can also look at how you're going to connect with others. We can look at the synastry of, you and your significant other, you and your friend, and we can see how you guys are going to tend to relate, how those energies are going to mix. Now, your time of birth is what sets up the houses. The time of birth, the constellation that's rising on the horizon at the time of your birth is your rising sign or your ascendant. And I know I talk about this a bit when I am in the video about finding your big three. And that ascendant is where you start your first house. So where those planets fall in which house is based very much on your time of birth. So that's what takes what's out there, everybody born that same day, and makes it very personal to you, and kind of how that's going to manifest, what areas of life and how that's going to manifest for you personally. I think about astrology as sort of a metaphor, or the book in the sky, right? If the universe is speaking to us, think about when you're struggling and we say, "Oh, why?" And we look up at the stars. Well, it's like the universe has a book and it's writing the answers to you, or the things that you need to hear and look at and think about right up there. So we instinctually know to look up. We don't always know to read. So the story up there, and it's telling us what energies are happening now, and how is that interacting with the chart that we had at our birth. So what is that focusing us on? Is that telling us that right now we need to buckle down and be responsible? Is it saying that right now might not be a good time for a relationship or for a move? Or maybe it's saying it's time to let go and be free. Or maybe it's saying it's time to take a risk, or could be a time your career life is highlighted and you should be focused there. So it's telling us where our greatest growth potentials are. So your birth chart is like this blueprint of your life, this energy stamp. And we can look at it throughout your life compared to a number of other things and talk about how that's going to interact. Now, how do you use that? I want you to think about like if I were to tell you that you have something interacting with Saturn, because everybody fears Saturn. Oh, the taskmaster, karma. How do I use that? Saturn interacting with my chart is simply an energy stamp. That's what I'm reading. So if we were to have an astrology reading, I'm going to talk to you about the energy stamps that are happening right now in your world. We can't change those. But how do you use them and how do you interact with them? That's really important. That has something to do with your own ability, your own development, your own skill, your sort of soul's ability to stay in higher frequency and use it in its higher expressions versus gravity. I know it's hard. On this earth, in this body, gravity just pulls us all down, and it's easiest to go to the lowest common denominator. So a lot of times people say, "Oh man, I have a Saturn aspect coming. Boy, I'm going to really get harmed," right? Like this is going to be bad news, bad karma. Well, maybe if you have no ability to keep your own vibration higher and you don't know how to work with that energy, then you haven't been very responsible. Yes, Saturn's going to come in and you're going to pay the consequences of where you haven't been responsible to yourself. That's Saturn's job, is to show you that you can't run away from the karmic consequences of your choices. However, as you gain more internal ability to keep yourself in higher frequencies and higher energies, then you can use the higher aspects of karma, of Saturn. Instead of being this rough karma coming in to consequence you, right? The mean parent, that's the low frequency of Saturn. And he'll play that role if you make him come down here to that low frequency. But by functioning at these higher loving frequencies, this is where lots of different kinds of healing modalities come in. As we function at higher frequencies, Saturn can interact with you from his higher frequencies. The loving parent who knows that you're responsible. There doesn't need to be consequences when you've already been responsible. In fact, you may find yourself feeling validated, like, I knew not to take that job and look, that company closed down. Or, I knew that relationship didn't feel stable and I walked away and it was really hard to do. And now I see this person is, making choices I wouldn't have been comfortable with. Right? So you may get validation at that point. There is, of course, probably little tweaks, like a good parent still showing you how to deepen that expression of responsibility and accountability. But it might be at a level that you can really appreciate. Like, I don't want to get involved with this individual right now. I have the Saturn transit, and I think that Saturn is asking me to be responsible to my heart and responsible to theirs. And I can see that I'm not in a good place for a relationship right now, and this person might fall in love with me, right? So I'm going to be responsible to their heart. That would be a lovely expression, a higher expression of a Saturn transit. So, by embracing the higher energies, embracing the ideas of maturity, responsibility, accountability, caution, follow through, when I embrace that during a Saturn aspect, then I'm going to thrive because this energy stamp is on me and I'm using it in a very productive way in my life, because right now is about Saturn. That's going to move along, and we're going to have a different energy stamp that we're working with right now. And the more I embrace, if it's Neptune, trust and intuition and music, right? Maybe instead of things like drugs or confusion, inability to make decisions, right? Or we have a Uranus aspect come in, and I'm going to learn to be, free and open and able to take risks instead of maybe erratic and unstable, right? So there's these higher and lower expressions of what's going on in your life. So that's another way that getting an astrology reading, working whether in counseling or in other healing modalities, that can help to really raise that vibration and understand what you're currently working with, the path that you came in and what you're here to learn about, so you can embrace that more fully, and really start to use the energies to your benefit, lifting your life into much higher expressions. There doesn't need to be so much pain. It doesn't need to be so hard, and there doesn't need to be so much suffering. We do this to ourselves, and we make these paths very difficult because we don't know how to embrace the right energies at the right times. So that's an overview of what astrology is, how it works, how I view it, what an astrology reading might do for you. If you have more questions, please send them my way. I love making these videos based on the questions I'm being asked. Again, I'm Little Wave with Your Stars Within. Thank you so much for watching.